All right. I got Sam Shoemate tonight joining me, or today. I don't know. I guess this is earlier than I usually do these things. So the bourbon hasn't even hit yet. So how you doing, brother?
Fair enough. I'm doing pretty well.
All right.
Just got done walking my dog, and yeah, beautiful day out here in Florida.
That's right. That's right. New move down to Florida. How you liking it so far?
That's good. Um, yeah, I where I'm at right now, there's a lot of palm trees and a lot of greens, so it's I'm actually sitting out on my third floor balcony right now, looking at all the beautiful environment. I came from a not so beautiful area, so this is nice to look at.
Yeah, it's a good change of scenery.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're enjoying it, man. I like that shirt you got too. That's
Oh yeah. Wore it
Raphael,
just for
right?
you, man. No, but this is one of my favorite shirts. I've had this shirt for 11 years now. I got this on my 30th birthday, so
Oh, nice. And
I
that's
break this
Raphael
out
because
on
he's
good
got Raphael's
occasions.
got the size.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good deal. Well, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle stuff. All right. As always, fueling today's discussion, not tonight's, will be America's Native Spirit bourbon. I got a new one that just popped in from Tin Cup. It's a 14
Nice.
year. Yep. This stuff is very, very good. It's only 84 proof, so it's a little lighter than what I'm used to. But I did hit them up with a review and I said it's already in the running for one of my personal favorites for
Really?
2025. For 2025. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
okay.
It's very, very good. I'm surprised. Like Tin Cup, I don't know so much about where it is in Florida because their liquor stores are a little different. Here in Virginia, everything's state run. And then out in California, Tin Cup was exorbitantly priced for some reason when everything else is usually
Mm,
very cheap out in California. So I haven't really had their typical stuff in a long time, but this popped up on an ad, bought it, was at the house in 3 days, and it's absolutely delicious. So anybody
nice.
wants
I'll
it, go
keep that in
get it.
mind.
It's in stock. It's only $70. It's not like most of the big producers where oh, here's a 14 year, we're going to charge $400 for it, and then it's 1,000 on the secondary market, right? So
Right,
it's nothing like
right.
that. Good stuff. All right. So been trying to talk to you for a while. There's a lot of things that I'd love to get your take on, your opinion on. You've done a lot of stuff within the veteran community, but how you kind of made your way into that? What led you to the Army? Because are you retired or did you just get out?
I am retired. I
Okay.
retired at 21 years in 2023.
Okay.
Um, Typical story. I was in high school and the Army recruiter table was there, uh, and the dude gave me
Gotcha.
I think it was a neck lanyard with
Yep.
"Go Army" on it or whatever it was back then, and I wanted it's when I took it, I put my information down, and then when he ended up calling, I don't know if it was a couple weeks later or whatever, it just clicked, and I said, "Yeah, Army, let's do that." And it was different because I had I had ambitions if I was going to go into the military to do a different branch, but ended up, just because that recruiter happened to be out there at that time and place with some cheap swag that pulled me in. So it
Swag
works.
game. If Userex out there listening, the lanyard still works.
They do, they do.
All right. So what that was 2002, 2002?
Yeah,
Okay.
2002 or well 2001 technically was my
That's when you
the
started.
end of my junior year in high school, and then I was that nerd that 9/11 happened, and I called up my recruiter and I was like, are they going to call us up? Are we going to basic training? And he's, no, you're going to finish high school. Pump the brakes there, high speed. There'll be plenty for you when you get here. But yeah, so
That's cool.
I
So yeah,
finished my senior year and then went into basic training.
okay, yeah. So we joined up around the same time. I'm a little older than you though. I was in college trying to pretend that I was going to be a baseball player, and that 9/11 woke me up to that reality. That here I am.
Nice, yeah, yeah.
So all right, and so did you enlisted obviously first? So what did you go do?
I've been a career intelligence analyst,
Okay,
so
Intel D.
yeah, I'm an intel weenie. And kind of I've done a bit of all of it, from everything from the nerd S2 stuff, doing your security clearance, all the way to being a targeting officer, and then some other stuff I got pulled into on the side when I was working at a special operations unit. I got pulled into doing signature reduction, and I won't expound on that, but for those out there in the community who know what that is, I did that for a few years, and that was eye opening to a different world we live in. And but yeah, I've done quite a bit of everything in my field, and
Oh,
kind of have a good take, well rounded feel for it.
signature reduction sounds cool. It's a lot like what's going on with the government by removing pronouns in their signatures. So that's kind of a
Well,
reduction.
quite a bit different. It actually has to
Yes.
do with
Sounds cool either way.
protecting people's identities and protecting
Oh,
people in the field. But yeah, yeah,
Good
It
deal.
was a good time.
Um, as we start going here, the cat wants to join in. So here's Frank. What's up, bud? Um,
Nice.
all right. And so I had no idea that this was you until fairly recently, but along your travels throughout the military, you started a fairly significant social media account. What was that?
It was TerminalCWO, and just to caveat for your listeners here, it only exists on Instagram and Telegram and Truth Social, but I don't use those anymore. The one on Twitter or X is not real. It was
Yeah.
created by some trolls, and people people will tag me along with that. And I'm like, you could tag them all day. I don't care. It's not me. So, but yeah, TerminalCWO, and that started in 2020. Um, and yeah, very very inactive these days. But
It served its purpose. I mean,
it did. I think it served its purpose. It might be around again for something else in the future,
mm.
but right now I have a different focus in life. So
What was the inspiration for it? Just
nothing other than boredom, to be
yeah.
honest. I was sitting at Fort Carson at the time, um, and we were hitting that COVID era, sort
Yeah.
of. It was, if people remember that winter before we found out what COVID was,
Mhm.
people were getting sick and stuff, and things were happening, and we knew it was out there. We knew something was off. In fact, I had gotten what I think was COVID in I want to say November of 2019, and I went to the hospital, and oh, you don't have pneumonia, you don't
Right.
have the flu.
Yeah.
Like, I'm dying, I can't breathe. I'm like, I am in bad shape, and it was one of the worst sicknesses I'd ever had, and I was certain I had pneumonia or something to that effect,
Mhm.
just because of how hard it was to breathe. But tested for all that stuff, that's not what you have, and then we find out COVID later, and oh, we think it was all the way back in 2019. So either way, so I started the page for just boredom, making memes and being dumb. In fact, I didn't even associate it with the military at first. It was just
Yeah.
make some dumb memes, post some stuff, and then I found out about the military community, and I was like, oh, let me jump into this. It's something I'm familiar with. And it wasn't too long after that spring is when the lockdowns took place, and didn't have a large following, maybe in the ish of close to 1,000, maybe at the time. I don't even think it was that many, but being associated with the warrant officer community, I started getting people from Fort Rucker, the pilots in school out there, reaching out saying, hey, um, we've got this stuff going on. What is this? And it was some pretty crazy stuff that was happening in their command, that was happening at the schoolhouse. And so I started looking into it more, started getting more information from people, and started talking about that. And those kind of turned into stories. And then it really blew up that summer when the lockdowns were really taking hold, when people were sick everywhere, when all these very stringent DoD policies were coming out. And I started seeing some really crazy stuff. And I was like, this isn't going to fly, man. We are not taking care of troops. Some really bad behavior. And yeah, it was kind of off after that. That summer was the first time a news agency reached out to me. It was Sean Naylor wrote an article for Yahoo News, and he had reached out to me based on the stuff I was reporting on at the time. I was just cobbling my stuff together, putting together like slides and stuff like that
Mhm.
for social media. And he did a whole story on it, and yeah, it took off after that. So
What was the most alarming thing early on to you that made you wonder, what are we doing from a military perspective?
I think it was that incident that happened at Campbell, and it wasn't just Campbell; it was happening everywhere. But I focused on the 101st, and so the military had a policy that if you tested positive for COVID, you were out for 2 weeks, no questions asked. You
Mhm.
test positive, you're gone for 2 weeks, you're on quarantine. Well, you know, you know as well as I do that in the military, to train to standard, you have to have a percentage of your unit present. You
Right.
can't just show up with 10 dudes out of 50 train and then be like, oh, we got
Hey,
10 of our guys trained,
yeah.
we're qualified. So what was happening was everybody was going down across the board. people were disappearing out of the ranks, and um, commanders couldn't pass their qualifications. They couldn't do their training. You have to forgive me. I'm actually
No, you're
recovering
good,
from
man.
pneumonia.
And you're in, it's also spring, so
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
outside.
Sorry. So, um, sorry. Anyways, so soldiers were dropping like flies from the formation. So Fort Campbell came out with a policy, and it wasn't so much as a policy as it was just a foot stomp thing where they told the commanders told their troops, "You will not go to sick call. You will not even see a medic unless you have direct written authorization from your commander." And so this is what they were trying to do, is they were trying to keep people from self-reporting testing positive for COVID and keep them in formation. So I was getting reports from dozens of soldiers that were sick as dogs, spiking fevers, and they weren't allowed to go to sick call. In fact, I had a medic that reached out and he was like, "I got threatened with UCMJ for treating somebody. I was seeing somebody and I didn't have permission to see them as a medic, and I was threatened by the commander that if I did it again, they were going to, give me an Article 15." So really bad behavior. Guys were like, "Dude, you know, I've got troops that are down and out. They are sick as dogs. They're being told to show up to formation. Can't get any kind of medical care." And then they started taking them to the field. And the crazy thing was they started taking pictures out in the field. And it was really embarrassing because they were taking quarantine tape, engineer tape. They were taking engineer tape. They were
No.
quarantining off an area in the woods. They were putting them in there and they're saying, "You're quarantined. Here's water, ibuprofen, stay put. But we have our numbers in the field so we can complete training. So you're here, but you're quarantined." And we're out in July in the hot
Yeah.
Kentucky slash
Yeah.
Tennessee sun,
Yeah.
and these dudes are running 103-degree fevers. They're dying out there in the heat, and they're not able to go back to the rear because they won't be able to complete training. They don't have enough personnel, and that blew my mind. And then on top of it, and this is really where I started going after command teams in the higher echelon, the division PAO started running interference on social media. You had hundreds of spouses that were going bananas on social media, posting, talking about what's going on with their spouses. And he was running interference the whole time. It was this O5 who was saying, "Oh, that's not how it works, and that's silly," and being really condescending to these spouses, talking down to them, saying that's not how this works, and that's not what engineer tape is for, and this is not true, and this is misinformation. And I'm like, "Dude, you're lying, man. This is crazy." So I went after him pretty hard, and you know, it, there was multiple incidents like that. But you had this thing taking place where the public didn't know about this. There was no public outcry because what was the DoD telling everybody? "Oh, if they're sick, they test positive, they go home."
Mhm.
Well, that's not what's happening.
Yeah.
That's what you're telling people is happening, but that's not what's actually happening. You've
Right.
got troops that are suffering needlessly so that you can complete your training, and then on top of it, you're taking them to NTC sick. You're taking them across the United States in the middle of this pandemic.
Yeah.
We're talking about this thing that was, at the time, we didn't know if this was the Ebola plague. We didn't
Right.
know what was going on.
Yeah.
So we're saying that you're healthy enough to travel to NTC across the car. I'm sorry, the 101st is JRTC, but you're
JRTC.
going to JRTC,
It's still
and
a trip.
it's still a trip,
Yeah.
and it was crazy how they were shuffling everything, but they were trying to do this under the guise of we're doing everything the right way, we're quarantining, and we're taking care of our troops. And I'm like, "You're lying." So
Where do you think that came from? Because it couldn't have just been a few like, and I use this loosely, creative commanders, right, trying to maintain numbers. But clearly, it wasn't just that. I mean, we're talking originating with a division. You mentioned a battalion commander. So clearly somebody like
well,
it can't just be contained to a battalion, right? Because then, like you said, PAO got involved. So this is already out. Where do you think that was coming from? And why did it start at the 101st?
but it didn't start at the 101st. Like I said, it was happening
Okay.
everywhere.
Yeah.
101st is what I focused on, but
Okay.
we had reports of this happening at Fort Hood. Not just reports,
Okay.
like overwhelming amounts of information of the same thing happening at Fort Hood, up at Fort Drum with 10th Mountain, all sorts of places. But this is something I really highlighted over the last several years was foot stomp policy. And I talked about this in great detail where you have two different forms of communication in the military. You have the op order, where somebody puts something down on an official operation order or a fragmentation order, a frago, and they put that out to the troops. And they say, from higher, this originated at Army or Corps or Division or wherever and came down. And then you have the foot stomp policy, where a commander looks at his other commanders and says, we're going to do the right thing, wink, wink, stomps his foot. It says, you know what it takes to get the job done. Make it happen, commanders. And that was the reality. We were seeing this overemphasized push for, okay, we've got the Biden administration breathing down our necks, telling us that we have to clamp down, that we have to quarantine, that we have to obey all these rules that CDC is putting out and do all these things. But at the end of the day, we are not going to grind to a halt as a military. So you had a lot of, and this was stated at the time. We had plenty of information, lots of information that came out about this from commanders who were opposed to what was taking place with the COVID lockdowns. They were opposed to this happening, but they had to support it because that was the official policy. But then they were being told, make training happen regardless. And it was a get it done at all costs. And we know that in the military. We know this, make it happen no matter what. I don't care what you have to do. You got that green checklist of 125% of tasks. Well, you can't do 125%. Right. You can't even realistically do 100% of tasks because that would consume 24 hours in a day. But that's what they'll give a commander. And then the commander has to lie on that list about what he actually accomplished and triage basically, okay, I'm going to prioritize this because I know this is what my sapper unit needs or my intelligence company needs to be successful. And then I'm going to just say I did these other things. It's this culture of lying that we've pushed on our officers. So anyways, that rant aside, it was foot stomp policy. And it's something else I coined, which was shadow policy. And this really made itself known during the COVID era. Shadow policy was a spokesperson standing up there and saying, this is official policy. We have this system. We have we have JAG. We have IG. We have Commander's Open Door policy, and troops have access to all of these resources to do all these things. And then there's underneath where we see IG, shuffling stuff off to command teams that bury stuff, and we see whistleblowers being silenced and being retaliated against. And we see representatives who ignore their constituents and all these things underneath. So you have the official policy, then you have shadow policy underneath, which is protect the organization at all costs. That is really the overarching theme in the military. And that's what general officers do. They protect their own, which is general officers, and they protect the institution at all costs, regardless of what's happening, protect the institution. And so really, that's what was happening, and it's not a great conspiracy. It was just commanders being told, get the training done. You know what you have to do, make it happen, and having side door conversations with each other. How are you going to do it, Bill? How are you going to do it, Tom? How are we going to get this done? Okay, well, let's do this thing where we tell them they can't go to sit call unless they come to me first. That way we don't lose too much of our formation. That type of stuff. Yeah, it's just
how ridiculous does it sound though when you say it out loud? Right? Like that's wild.
It is. And it was eye-opening to see because you live in a world that you think is really institutionalized with these, in the Army, we have the Army values, integrity, honor, loyalty, all these things. But then when you see this stuff take place in front of you and you watch this thing that you could call a conspiracy, but it's not even conspiracy. It's just human beings indoctrinated to do a thing a certain way, and that's the military way, doing it in unison together. And you're like, wow, this is wild. They're just dispensing with any kind of integrity whatsoever, and here's the result. So,
and that's what's kind of hard, because like you said, I mean, it's one thing for some dude who does his initial 3 years, gets out, he doesn't really hear too much of the whole Army values thing outside of, initial entry training, right? He goes basic, he goes AIT, he's got the shit all over the walls, he gets his little name tag, he's got his little card with all the values and shit on it. But by the time he really gets a chance to learn any of that stuff, he's done. He's off going using his GI Bill, hopefully, and somewhere else. But the people who make careers of this
Reality.
stuff, right? The people who make careers out of this, how do they stray so far from that?
I don't know. We joke about it all the time. And
Yeah.
I think it is the truth. But the joke is, you get groomed, especially officers. And we've seen this happen. Even it's not just officers; it's senior enlisted as well. You
Oh
get
yeah.
groomed to be a certain way and to do a certain thing and to hold the party line.
Mhm.
And if you want to keep going to the top, you make that party line part of your core, who you are. The higher you go, the officers joke about it all the time. Like I think ILE is the
Mhm.
school that that they talk about. Your brain is removed, you get the lobotomy, and then you get the new brain, and
Yeah.
now you're the institutional officer after you go to
Yeah.
ILE, and that's just the reality of it. If you want to keep moving up the chain, and especially if you want to wear a star someday, you're going to play the political game, and you're going to protect the institution at all costs. You're not even considered for general officer if you haven't kissed enough ass in your time and kissed enough rings to prove that you are willing to protect the organization and your peers at all costs.
You think it's something that's how it's always been, or is this kind of because from the NCO side, I see like the degradation of the NCO Corps, in my opinion,
Mm-hmm.
will always have started and originated with the global war on terror and just forcing people through what eventually became BLC was PLDC. All those like the NCOES schools kind of forcing them through, removing slowly over time the standard, and just kind of we got to promote people even if they're deployed or even if they're this, and it started removing just how people were groomed to become leaders in the NCO side. Do you think that's a byproduct of the global war on terror, or is how and it's just being amplified because of all the ways of it getting out now through social media, et cetera? Or is this kind of how it's always been?
I see it as twofold. So what you described, yes, it is a byproduct of the global war on terror. It is a byproduct of lowering standards and all the things that we did in the aughts, the mid 2000s and up to increase our ranks. But it was also, and along with that, what we saw was there was a couple of pivotal moments where you had you had more of a spotlight on the military than we'd had in a long time,
Yeah.
and so you had mothers reaching out to Congress being like, why is my little Johnny being treated this way by his drill instructor, his drill sergeant, and blah, blah. And so Congress came down with these heavy handed measures against training and doctrine and basically said, you guys are being too mean. You're being too mean to, little Johnny here, fix
Mhm.
it. And so we saw overwhelming changes made in the military where NCOs were stripped of authority and their ability to discipline and in the way that they needed to. There were always bad apples. There were guys that
Yeah.
need to be policed
Yeah.
up, and that was the job of the platoon sergeant or the
Right.
first sergeant. It was
Yep.
their job to make sure that their junior NCOs didn't get too crazy with things. But you needed that E5 and that E6 to jump in there and crack some heads.
Yep.
You needed them to smoke the dog piss out of somebody for a couple hours to make sure that they never did that thing again.
Right.
That was critical to morale and welfare and discipline within the ranks. And when that disappeared, the whole counseling statement thing turned into a joke. And
It
with
is a
that,
joke.
it's a complete joke.
It's
Nobody cares about paper. Like, put me on paper, dude. I don't
yeah.
care.
Yeah.
But you make me drag a tire iron around the freaking motor pool for an hour.
Yeah.
I'm gonna think about what I did and maybe check myself or try not to get caught in the future. Either way, I'm gonna have a course correction. But
Yeah.
and we saw this with CSMs. CSMs turned very political. They became, officer light, where they were no longer advising and telling their commander what they needed to hear. They were telling them what they wanted to hear. They became yes men. They became, oh yes sir, you're doing a great job, sir, because I need your approval to move up to the next level or stay in, or
Yeah.
it became a good old boy club where these senior NCOs weren't being true to their formations anymore, and not across the board. There's still good NCOs out there, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying there
Absolutely.
aren't, but as a general consensus, we lost a lot of that meat within the Army, especially. And then along with that secondary line of effort was the culture in America. I really believe that the kind of the kind of men that we used to produce in a world that was more more hardline and stringent with those values, those
Hmm.
core nuclear family values that we were raised with. As we saw the family in America just come crashing down more and more, with more pollution coming in through media and social media and everything else, just ravaging our morals and our character. We saw more and more bad apples and just bad individuals putting on the uniform and wearing the rank and leading, and we've just seen a slow decline in who leads our troops now. So it's a, you know, it's a wound by what's the term,
Death by a thousand paper cuts.
yeah, death by a thousand paper cuts, and
Yeah.
that's what it is. We see all these different lines of effort
Yeah.
just chopping away, and it's had a significant degradation on our military.
Do you
So
think do you think social media heavily influenced that when, the Pentagon, what was it, probably, I think, 2010 or 2011, when they're just like, they were at that fork in the road, right? When social media is starting to go up and up and up, and more soldiers coming in had a presence already, and it still wasn't very widespread. But the DoD at some point, I think it was 2010 or 2011, were like, either everyone gets it or no one gets it, and they opted for, hey, we can't stop it, so have at it. And it's kind of evolved
yeah,
devolved into where we're at now, where you have
I
many,
think
especially you saw like people trying to be influencers in the wrong ways and openly
yeah,
subverting the chain of command, like we see right now. Like, do you
right.
think that had a big part on it, or is this just something that people have always been this way and now they just have another way to show it?
No, I think the same sort of cultural decline led to this. I don't see social media so much as having been uh, an amplifying effect to that degree. But with, I'm going to contradict my statement just slightly by saying also that, yeah, the culture we're raised in ultimately is going to shape us to a certain degree. I don't think it had as much of a shaping effect as being present in a village being raised by people. But at the same time, seeing stuff and taking stuff in and adopting different mindsets and seeing behavior ultimately is going to shape you to a certain degree. But I don't see it having the overwhelming decline on discipline as other things, such as, like I said, stripping NCOs of their authority
Yeah.
and ability to discipline troops. So I see social media as a good thing, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
What I did and what so many other people did is we exposed a lot of the corruption and bad behavior that wouldn't have been seen otherwise. And there were a lot of folks putting things on blast, getting things to reporters, not just in the last 4 or 5 years, but even prior to that. I can think of a number of accounts that I mean, obviously the big elephant in the room is U.S. Army WTF moments.
Yeah.
They were putting a lot of crazy stuff on blast early on, and we wouldn't have known about that otherwise. We wouldn't have
Yep.
seen this really bad stuff. And the crazy thing was, it kind of broke through this mindset we had where, no, the Army overall is doing the right thing. We were watching this crazy stuff take place. Jose was coming out with his reports and all this, and we were like, is this real?
Hmm.
Is this made up social media garbage? No,
Yeah,
we're
there's some
finding
of that
out
stuff
this
where
is
we would
real.
sit in the office and be like, there's no way this is real. Like, this is fake.
Right. And it's just because, and I was the same way.
Yeah.
When I started doing this, I was at, what was I at? I was 16, 17 years in. And, I had been a sergeant first class for 3 years, and then I went warrant officer, and I'm seeing stuff, and I'm like, that doesn't happen. This isn't real. And I didn't believe that.
Yeah.
And it took me like really digging in and getting a lot of corroboration and really feeling this out. I was nowhere near where I am now as far as my ability to feel out and
Yeah.
decide what's real and what's not real. Because I was just, I had this doubt about everything. And I was like,
Yeah.
this cannot be actually what's
Yeah.
happening. And I looked at everything like, this is crazy. I am seeing this in real time. I am looking at black and white evidence, and this is just not the Army I know. And then I realized not just the Army. It's not just this unit or this unit. This is widespread across the military with all sorts of wild stuff. And now we're seeing it just all sorts of crazy stuff. Vice admirals who are saying we'll wait out the administration for 4 years. What a wild thing to say out loud.
Out loud. Yeah, like I
Out
get it.
loud. Yeah.
I get it. Like if you want to have these conversations privately, like I'm sure they've been going on since the
Sure.
dawn of the fucking the union. But
Right.
you're just like, you know what? I'm gonna say it out loud so everyone can see and hear. Like, come on. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
Yeah.
Because
No sense.
what was the treatment for someone doing that under the previous administration? Right? It never would have happened.
No. I
But
mean,
some for
just
some
absolutely
reason,
buried.
right, like I don't get it. I really don't. It blows my mind that the what you're pointing out is how and that's not the only one.
No. I mean, we saw the colonel get fired the other day because it, see, this is the thing. These aren't these aren't little faux pas. These aren't like little incidents here and there. We're making a big deal out of nothing. No, we saw a full bird colonel who said, I'm going to send a mass email, not out to the commanders,
Mhm.
not out to the command teams or whatever. I'm going to send a mass email out to the entire, all the entire installation here, the everybody, all the way down to E1 is going to see this email and say, well, the vice president of the United States does not represent what we represent here at this military facility that represents the United States. You're like,
You have your priorities completely fucking backwards.
right. Do you have a
It's not how this
PAO? Do you
works.
have a JAG? Do you have anybody that said, man, please don't send that?
Yeah, that's not how
That's
the operation.
crazy.
That's not how the chain of command works, man. And I
Right.
feel like you should have learned this at some point for you to gotten to where you are. Yeah, yeah.
But
That
that's,
was different. That was different.
and
But for
they've
such a
become
swift
so,
response, that's a good thing.
it is, but they've become so comfortable with
Yeah.
this way of thinking and in an institution that protects them in their infantilized, uh, feel good, woke little ecosphere that now that there's anything that's kind of like pulling that apart and saying, nope, we're going to return to an institution that we should be in the military, they are freaking out. They are freaking out and they are just being overt about it.
Yeah.
It just, people, these field grade officers posting on their own personal social media accounts,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
wild stuff. This major who called Donald Trump a twat. I was
Yeah.
like, well, that's one way to do it on your personal social media
Yeah.
account.
Yeah. And
So
that's why like I mean, I think you and I have we kind of went through a similar, I don't know if it was shock or if it's just an eye opening where we're just like, there's no way that's going on. I haven't lived it, so there's no way that's real in the army. And then you slowly start to pull back and you see things and you being as long as that we have been or were. Um, how did one, because it seems to only be one president, because you and I both served under multiple ones, both in different, different parties. That's gone on from the dawn of time. I can point to uh, veterans who hated Clinton for the downsizing. I can point to veterans who hated Reagan because of shit in the Cold War. You can point to veterans who hate these individuals who are as the president or just don't feel very favorably toward them all the time. And yeah, they didn't have like an outlet through social media to post that. But how has seemingly one president, just one, inspired such odd fucking behavior from people this high up in the ranks?
yeah, I
Because
I
from the
would,
not to cut you off, but from like the
yeah.
military perspective, he's done nothing but try to actually help the military become stronger and better and more effective. So how does that counter what they should purport to want to do themselves as commanders and other high influential individuals within the military? It's kind of a weird response.
I don't know. If I don't want to jump too much into the conjecture about who was supposed to do what, but I mean, pure and simple, Hillary Clinton was supposed to win the presidency in
Yeah.
2016.
Mm-hmm.
It was it shocked everybody to include Trump. To include Trump, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
he was just like,
No, you're
"Whoa,
100% right. Yeah, he's like, oh
I'm the
shit, I got to be
president
the
now."
president now.
Right?
Yeah,
It
I
shocked
agree.
everybody. She was supposed to be the president, and she was supposed to carry out this, the stuff that Obama had started. There was a order in place. We already had this established in this country. She was supposed to take the presidency. She was supposed to continue on the Obama agenda. Trump threw a huge wrench in all of that. And I'm sure there will be plenty of people who jump in and accuse Trump of being a part of the global elite and he's just another pawn in the game, whatever. I'm not playing 5D chess here. Bottom line is that Hillary was supposed to win and she didn't. And Trump made a lot of stuff bad for their agenda. And the way that they came after him and demonized him, they did it throughout. They did it very effectively, not just on I'm going to call you a orange man bad on news, but they went after him in the institutions. Yeah. And they taught curriculum that likened Trump to Hitler. And they did this over and over and over for years. So, we had even curriculum in the military that we saw pop up here and there where it talked about how Trump and fascism and likening him to the right wing and KKK and insider threats and homegrown terrorism. And this was military doctrine that was being trained to our troops in these classes. And it would blow up on different platforms and people would expose it, all this. But you had this concerted effort of people trying to shape the institution to hate this man and to see him as a villain, to see him as the next Hitler. He's going to destroy democracy and all this stuff, which always gags me because I'm like, we're not a democracy. Just saying that. But anyways, regardless, they keep saying, it's going to destroy democracy. And so you can't hear that over and over and over and over and over for years and then not adopt that. If you come up through these institutions and everywhere else, if you sat in these drum circles at Starbucks and repeated this mantra over and over for years. I mean, these people believe this like a religion. So to them, resisting Trump is a part of their duty as service members. It is their duty because they see him as a threat to the republic itself. It's by design. You can't overcome that in a short period of time because it was done over years and years and years.
It's just, and yeah, it's kind of silly to see, like, and I know I go back to what you said earlier on, where it's the culture in the country, not just the military, like the people we're starting to produce, the values, the morality. Yeah, I don't know what's going to bring that back. I feel like we're kind of on a right path. I think there's kind of been a little bit of an awakening for the most part. I think it's slow, but we are moving in good ways. I think it's going to take another unifying event. Unfortunately, I think at some point, I know some people, I guess prophesize might be the wrong word, but thought, hey, maybe COVID was going to bring people together in this country. That didn't happen.
That did not happen. No,
that was not the calling of the next generation. Like 9/11 was for us. That's how we found ourselves in, or I guess you were going to do it anyway, but I had no desire until 9/11. But yeah, I don't know what's going to be that thing, but I don't want to go too far down that road because I want to actually go back to where we are. All right, we saw what was going down with the 101st, other units, as you talked about. It was systemic. And then the vaccine came out.
Yeah.
Take me through that time. Take me through that.
So I actually wrote an embarrassing blog that I hope nobody ever finds.
What's the link? I'll put it in here.
No, it's not up anymore, but it was up for a little bit. I actually wrote an embarrassing blog that said, I'm glad that Austin finally mandated the vaccine. Here's why. At the time, I was tired of the back and forth. I was tired of all the Q theories about this vaccine being dangerous. I had my own friend who was big into the Q community say, don't take this vaccine. It's dangerous. It's going to do this and that. And I was like, dude, I'm not getting into all this nonsense with you. I took the vaccine in March of right after it came out. I took it fairly quickly. And my commander was like, why'd you take it? Because he wasn't pushing anybody to take it. He was like, if you want to. And I was like, because I'm going to have to take it eventually anyways. And whatever. I've had every other vaccine. I didn't think about it. I didn't think that there was a dangerous conspiracy. I didn't think that I was going to get killed by this thing. That wasn't a thing in my world. So when the
little digital card right there.
Oh yeah.
April 1st was the first shot, 2021.
Yeah.
There you go.
So I wrote this blog and I said, I'm glad that Austin finally mandated it so we can quit doing this back and forth thing. Because there was a lot of nonsense going on in the military where I expect all my commanders to get it, even if it's not mandated. You need to be setting a standard for your units and this and that. And I was like, it was crazy. Like overt coercion and pressing on the necks of people before the mandate was even in place. You know, for instance, General Donahoe or Donahue, the commanding general of the 82nd Airborne Division, was coming down on his troops because they were supposed to go over to Afghanistan, whatever. He's like, "You will get the vaccine." Well, it was still optional, and and so when the mandate came out, I was like, finally. It wasn't until September, and I've got a girl that's in my research group, one of several, but she was a prominent voice at the time, named Janine. And a lot of people know Janine now. Janine is hands down one of the most brilliant open source researchers I've ever met in my life. She reaches out on Instagram, just like a lot of people did. They reach out, they send me messages or whatever. And I was, I might engage with you, I might not. I get a lot of messages, but I could tell right off the bat that she was sending me real stuff. I was like, this is crazy. And she was like, check this out, check this out, check this out. And she was sending me this documentation. And I was like, whoa. So I invited her to a Telegram group. We set up this Telegram thing and we started talking. And then Terry Adram came out with that memo that said that the EUA vaccine and the Pfizer, or the EUA and FDA approved vaccines were interchangeable. We were like, what is going on? This isn't legal. And we're looking at these federal statutes. We're looking at all the policies and regs and everything else. We're like, they can't do this. And then we found out that not only did they not produce an FDA approved vaccine, like they didn't make it. Sure, they approved one, but they didn't actually make it. But they had actually revoked the license the same day that they approved it. So on August 23rd of 2021, they approved it, and then they pulled the biologics license that same day. We have it side by side. And the next day it was mandated, even though they didn't produce that. And so they said, well, you can use the EUA interchangeably. And we were like, no, you can't. That shit's illegal, man. You can't make these interchangeable. That's like, and so we just started going nuts, like blasting this out there. And there was a lot of pushback at first. For me, for instance, I was called for years, and I still am, the anti-vaxxer. If people even posted anything from TerminalCWO on Reddit, they got instantly banned. We do not mention TerminalCWO on Reddit. Reddit is off limits. If you post that shit over here, we are blocking and banning you. You do not get to say that wacko Q conspiracy theory, anti-vaxxer crap over here. It is interchangeable. They've already approved it. There's an FDA approved vaccine, all this nonsense. And we're like, no, there isn't. So we started making videos and we started digging and grinding. And slowly over time, we got the NDAA reversed and started doing things. And now with all the information out there, we've won 6 court cases where they've proven definitively that what was done in the military was unlawful. And we fought back against this. We've gotten so many things changed, but the one thing that we can't get finished is the DOD to blatantly say out loud that it was unlawful. The DOD has not taken that position yet. They're coming back and saying what was done to you was wrong. And we're like, why? Why was it wrong? Because if they disobeyed a lawful order, then it wasn't wrong. They're lawbreakers. They deserve to get kicked out of the military. Mm-hmm. Tell us why it's wrong. It's wrong because it wasn't lawful.
Unlawful.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. All right. It wasn't lawful. Good. We got it. All right, so we can't get them to say that, and that's the thing. Now they want to bring guys back, and they're like, well, come back and join this organization that can break the law and not be held accountable for it. You want to come back? Like, no, I'll pass.
So I get it. New SecDef, new people coming in, but who's preventing that from taking place at this point?
Let's just say the deep state. I don't know. There are so many people involved with all this stuff. It's what actually gets to Hegseth's ear, what gets to his advisors, who's involved at what level. Let me tell you something. Let me tell you this.
Yes.
This is something you'll find fascinating. And I put this out on X, but
here we go.
So we had somebody high up in the Trump administration back in November before. It was either right before or right after the election. But somebody reached out to my then boss, Dr. Pete Chambers, somebody very high
in the Trump administration,
very high in the incoming Trump administration in the Department of Defense. Reached out to my boss and said, I need a list put together a list of all the shitheads in the general officer corps who, DEI, wokeness, COVID mandate. Specifically, they were focused on DEI and all this. So a boss reaches out to me, he's like, hey, this is more your lane. Can you do this? So yeah, sure. So I pulled together a group of my friends. We got to work and we put together a very robust list of general officers that were bad actors that needed to be removed. We sent this forward. Here's where it gets interesting. We sent this list forward and we got contacted by we get the rank right. It's Air Force E9. It was a command chief master sergeant in the Air Force reaches out to my then boss, Doc Chambers, and says, can we talk? He wants to talk. I'm like, that's odd. This was like within 24 hours. He wanted to talk.
Quick.
And he sends me the note and he's like, hey, this guy wants to talk to me about the list and blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to push him off on you. And I was like, okay, weird. So I tell this to my group. We start looking into it. Turns out this chief, I'm just going to call him chief.
Yeah.
Had to have
it's the Air Force. They got to make it.
But this chief, he was the senior enlisted advisor for one of the general officers on that list.
Oh.
Come to find out, that general officer's wife works in the Trump administration. Oh. She works directly within the inner circle. So somehow she got her hands on this list, handed it to her boss or her husband, who was like, oh, my name's on the list. And his chief reached out within 24 hours to us. And I was like, that is so grimy, dude. Like, the fact that you were handed this list and you just handed it off willy-nilly. So my point with all this is you don't know who's working where. It is a big mess of all kinds of connected people across the deep state, whatever that looks like, of people with their own interests and they're beholden to the military industrial complex through Raytheon, Lockheed, all these different places and lobbyists here and there. And then you have powerful general officers who have made a lot of powerful friends in Congress over the years. They're all connected and they're all talking and they're all doing this stuff. And we see on the surface the Department of Defense saying, yeah, we're going to bring you back in and we're going to right this wrong and all this other stuff. But what that actually looks like underneath, once again, shadow policy. All these people putting their hands in the pot and saying what's what, and lawyers who supported the COVID vaccine and said it was legal, now writing the framework for bringing people back in. You think for a second that they're going to say that the DOD did anything wrong or that they did anything unlawful? No, that would go against everything they've been saying for years. And these are the smartest people in the world, right? These lawyers are the smartest human beings, and they'll tell you how smart they are. Yeah. They'll get on social media and they'll tell you how stupid you are and how smart they are. And there's no way that they're going to admit that they were wrong. So that's where we're at. That's kind of what it looks like on the inside.
I'm on Sean Parnell's little X account real quick. I thought he just posted something about come on back.
Yeah.
Or was that? Did he? I don't know if I'm seeing.
I'm doing my best to ignore those counts because it's really irking me.
Yeah. No, I get it. So that brings me to that next question then. So I know yourself and others have worked exhaustively to get what you said, to get them to eventually say, hey, you're right. We're sorry. And this was unlawful. All right. We're not there yet. However, they are offering to bring or to let these soldiers that were removed for refusing to take the vaccine that was unlawful. But are they offering rank and back pay, or are they just saying you can come in? Because I know I've seen both. I don't know which one's actually true. So what is the actual policy saying at the moment?
Yeah, so they're offering what your rank was. You're not going to get anything extra. If you were supposed to be a 7 and you were a 6, you're going back into the 6. In fact, one of my friends is a full bird colonel in the Air Force Reserve now. She was a light colonel. I believe she was active. I think she was on active reserve or something. Anyway, she wasn't just reserve. Whatever she was active somehow. So anyways, the way the policy talks now is if she went back into her old spot where she was, the policy states that it would be at the rank they were with back
The
pay,
previous
and so she would be getting a demotion from colonel to light colonel
because she
based on the
was a
policy. Right. So that one's kind of crazy. And then you have I don't know, they screwed people over with this because they basically said the only way you're getting back pay is if you didn't work for the last 2 years or the last 3 years or whatever. Because if you made any money, we're going to take that money and reduce it from what your back pay would have been. And
okay.
so back pay is not a thing. So you'll basically come in, you'll be behind all your peers where they were
Yep.
at. So everybody will outrank you at this point. You'll have missed out on all the schools. The only people that it really benefits are those folks who are
Super
close to
high
the
up.
retirement.
Yeah, because they get the
Yeah,
retirement service time accredited.
right. Well, just coming back in for like if you were at 18 years coming in and doing 2 years, knocking that out and
Oh, you don't
retiring.
get, so if you left at 18, you don't get the years you were out added back to, like you won't come in,
I'm
say you're
not
out 3 years, you don't come back in at 21 and then you can retire. Like
I'm
that.
not positive on that.
Yeah.
You might. Either way, you still have to commit to doing years. So it's not like you can come in,
Right, and just retire
sign
then.
some
Although I
paperwork,
guess you
and
could
retire.
because it takes 2 years to retire anyway, as you probably know. So I mean,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
could
true,
start
true.
it.
But
Yeah, that's interesting. So, all right. So if I'm one of those people, because I think I don't know if it was him, but it was someone I saw. It was kind of silly on the surface. It was like dozens have decided to make that return or come back in or something. Like I think the words literally were dozens.
dozens. It
And
was.
like,
It was.
was
Yep,
that? Yeah.
dozens.
I was like, come on, didn't we kick out like 8,000? There were dozens are coming. That could
So we kicked out 8,700, and then on
8,700.
top of that, we lost tens of thousands more of people who left, resigned their commissions, retired, people who were going to stay in, and yeah. So the full scope of how many left is it's it's pretty high. I'm not going to throw out a random number, but I've seen it before, and it was very high up there in the mid hundreds of thousands of what the overall estimated damage was from all this, and how much talent we lost off the top end.
Can I ask you this? I don't know if you'll know this because it just popped into my head. We're talking about the vaccine, and I was a recruiting station commander as soon as COVID hit. Like we were the first office in the entire battalion, and which was Northern California, which was ultimately Solano County, which was probably the first county to shut down, period, in the country. And I'm starting to, I'm just like, all these things are reminding me of like when we started putting people back in again, there was a lot of people we couldn't get because they wouldn't go take the vaccine at MEPS. Are we still
Oh,
making them
really?
take the vaccine at MEPS? Do you know?
Well, this is what I tell people, and I don't have conclusive proof one way or the other. It's still on the schedule as far as I'm tracking, and
Oh,
I
shit.
can't prove whether it's mandated or not. But here's what I tell moms: they've reached out to me. I've probably talked to a dozen moms who have reached
Yeah.
out over time. Not recently, but they asked me like, so if I was told that I could get a waiver when I was at recruiting, and they'll process it and blah 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 and all this other stuff. And I said, here's the bottom line: your kid, regardless of whatever paperwork he gets, your 18-year-old child is going to go to basic training, and he's going to be in a meat grinder
Yep.
of a whole bunch of drill sergeants with brown rounds screaming at people, and he's going to go, drill sergeant, I have a religious accommodation, or I have an exception to policy, and he's going to, yep, rip, rip, rip. You're going through the meat grinder, and your kid's getting the vaccines whether he likes it or not. Don't
Yeah.
play that game, and you're going to be like, that's unlawful. Welcome to the club.
Yes, correct.
That's the Army. How about it? If you don't want your kid to get vaccinated, don't join the Army.
Yeah,
Bottom line.
it's true. That first
It's
week is
you're not
definitely
getting out of it.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no,
It-
I'm surprised and like I honestly haven't thought about that until you and I were having this conversation. I was like, oh shit, I can think of several people by name who would love to join. But when we told them they were going down the MEPS to enlist and do their physical, they had the COVID vaccine. Mom and dad and themselves were like, nah, I'm not doing
we
that.
caught we caught people, medics, trying to swap. Like, this is the most illegal stuff in the world, trying to swap flu vaccines with the COVID vaccine to, oh, sorry,
What?
accidentally, while all this stuff was going on. We have documented, we did several reports on incidents like this. We had one that the Army Times picked up where they were giving out flu vaccines at this is up at Fort Lewis, and this was years ago, but they were giving out flu vaccines, and we accidentally got like Army Times reported a couple dozen, I think. The actual number was in the hundreds. They had accidentally inoculated hundreds of people with the COVID-19 vaccine. And then they realized, oh man, we're giving people the wrong vaccine. Oh, here, sorry, we got the flu vaccine now. So not only did I break that one, but Army Times reported on as well. And this stuff was really happening. So I'm like, dude, if you think that you're going to go to basic and not get that mRNA stuck in your body, you're just fooling yourself.
That's so honestly, that's so Army though. Like, I mean, even if like you're breaking that, like, yeah, that's a big story, but at the same time, it's like it's definitely an Army thing for sure.
Yeah. And you can scream about it, you can say it's unlawful, you can do this, that, the other. If you have not been in the Army and experienced the mechanism of basic training, and you're like, try to explain to somebody when you get to your first unit and you see somebody wearing stripes, the fear you have of those stripes. Do I have that fear anymore? Of course not. I don't care. But I remember having that fear and being terrified of NCOs because they had those stripes, because it's ingrained in you. Go into the meat grinder of the Army and experience it. You can't convey that mindset to somebody who hasn't been in it. Why would you be scared of somebody who has rank? I wouldn't be scared of them.
Exactly.
You would if you went through it.
Yeah.
You would.
Yep.
Not forever, but
no, not forever. And maybe not even so much now. But when you and I went through, and obviously people who came before us, very much so. Very much so.
And it's necessary to have a well-oiled machine in the military, but
right there, because there's one purpose, regardless of how it may look to some people on social media. There's still only supposed to be one purpose of a military, and that's just to fight and win the nation's wars, and that's it. And people are going to die. And to reduce the death, you want to have a good disciplined fighting force who listens and doesn't sit there and be like, "But why?"
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And we found out that the secondary mechanism of the military, and I think a lot of people went through anthrax as old heads.
Just about to bring that up. Yeah.
But if you look back and you see over the years, specifically, let's talk about inoculating the Black community with syphilis to test on them. If you go back and you see that the Department of Defense has always been a test bed for trying out new stuff, whatever that stuff is, seeing how diseases work, seeing how vaccines interact with people. We have always been guinea pigs. And it hasn't been until social media that we've had a voice to speak out against that, because the media controlled the narrative otherwise. And so we are talking about COVID-19 now, and even anthrax to some degree, even though people were screaming about anthrax and writing books about it back then because that was unlawful as well. We didn't know about it because social media didn't exist. And we only know about this one because social media has amplified it to the degree it is. So
I was going to ask you about it because I remember getting the anthrax vaccine, because I went in through, I don't know if you went to Iraq or not, but I went.
I did.
Okay. So I went during the invasion, and I remember, I was at Fort Stewart and getting my little jabs for the anthrax vaccination. And I remember how much it burned the first time. I'm like, oh shit, like why is right? And then we did smallpox, which I know that's been around forever, but maybe it's because what was I? I think it was 21 or 22. I think it was 22. Yeah. I was 22 just turned 22 when we got to Fort Stewart. I don't remember, because we didn't have social media, like you said. Was there that big of an outcry for the anthrax vaccination? Like, do you remember yourself? Like, I just didn't. Clearly, I was not paying attention to that because I didn't have any outlet.
Right.
I was just in my unit, right? Like hanging out with my boys, and all right, we got to go get vaccinated today.
100%. I didn't hear anything about it at the time. Only now, having worked with those people who did fight back against it in the community, do I know that there was a fight against it. There were books that were written about it. Dale Saran, who has been a prominent lawyer in this fight, was a prominent lawyer in that fight. Wow. There were a number of people who fought back against it, but you wouldn't know about it once again because why would you? Your leadership told you to go get this vaccine. It was illegal to do so. It was an EUA vaccine, not a vaccine, but I don't even know what you call anthrax. I guess
when you say EUA, what is EUA? What is that?
That's emergency use authorization. Okay, and that's what, when that comes out, that like COVID, they made this, okay, you can use it under emergency, but you cannot force a service member to take an EUA.
Okay.
according to U.S. Code 1107 Alpha, unless the president signs a waiver, which removes informed consent, you cannot force a service member to take this drug.
Interesting.
And so that was the whole thing with the COVID-19 vaccine. That's what they did with anthrax. So COVID-19, they approved it, they FDA approved it, but they never produced it. So they still had, all they had was the
Yeah.
EUA batches, and they were in, and that's why Terry Adams came out with the memo and said you can use these interchangeably. No, you can't. Legally, you cannot use an EUA and an FDA approved drug interchangeably. It's just stupid on the face of it. It's beyond retarded. And anybody with a legal degree saying that needs to go back to school, because like it's right there in black and white. But anyways, that's what we dealt with. And it was all predicated off this false memo. Terry Adram, I don't know if you've seen the news about her, but she was recently fired from the CIA.
Yep.
They found out about a bunch of this stuff, and we got that message to the right people on the House Intel Committee, and yeah, she got canned. So bye, along with some other bad stuff she did at the CIA, like blowing the cover of a bunch of case officers.
Oh yeah, that like because you get your vaccine card's going to have some special characters on it. Like
right?
Who allows this to happen? Like who? Like this is my problem, right? And now the CIA has a lengthy history of questionable decisions, right? But did no one say or raise their hand and be like, you know what? It's probably not a good idea to have covered officers get a different set of numbers saying they've got the vaccine as opposed to everybody else, because someone could look at that and be like, oh, and look, I'm not an intel dude. I had a pretty good GT score, but I don't need to be a rocket surgeon to know that this group of numbers might look different from this group, which means these are probably different people. Like,
so that's going back to what I said at the beginning of this podcast. I worked in signature reduction.
yeah,
that was my job for folks in the military, and I won't expound about beyond that. But there is a whole group of support personnel whose job is to protect the identity of people doing that type of work. And the fact that, yeah, that slipped under everybody's radar, I'm like, you're fired, you're fired, just get out. All of you get out, because that's your sole purpose in life is to protect your guy's identity from getting out there.
Oh my gosh. It's wild to see. That's
Yes.
why, I've go back and I've talked on many of these episodes with others about just the loss of trust in these institutions that for so long were revered.
Yeah.
And now, as we get to our age, and I've had this conversation with just family members and friends who talk glowingly about certain military and on. I'm like, members of Congress, the Senate, whatever. There's nothing special about these people. They're just there where they chose to try and get there, and they're there now. But other than that, holding these people in some sort of esteem or high regard, it's as silly as saying a pro athlete's your hero. Like Charles Barkley had it right years ago. I'm not a role model. You're right. You're not. You play basketball really well, right? That's good. And those people, they're not role models either. They're just people who managed to get there. And a lot of them only are there because they've managed to, as you said, do the right things and stick around long enough, because eventually someone has to get there. And that's who's
somebody
there.
has to get there.
Somebody has to get there.
Right. That is literally to the military and even a lot of these agencies to a T. Somebody has to do it, and you've been here the longest, so might as well be you. We had a CSM in 7th group who was we found out the backstory on this guy. This guy was stacked, had all the scare badges, all the cool guy stuff,
nice
Tower of Power on his arm, blah blah blah, and everything else. Found out that he had done the least team sergeant time of any of the NCOs there, and everybody hated him. So basically, they just shuffled him off to schools his entire career
and
to get him away from the team. And so what happens? He blows up on paper and he looks amazing.
Hey,
He's
looks
been to
super
all
qualified.
the cool guy courses. Yeah, super qualified, ends up as our CSM. So we're literally in Afghanistan, and he had a policy that operators couldn't have beards longer than an inch. So he would go around on the different cops that they were at and the different VSPs, and he would measure their beards. So you got a CSM that has nothing better to do going around measuring beards of his team guys out there doing work in Afghanistan. And he shows up. Oh, he also had a boot policy. They had to wear a certain type of boot. All right. So anybody who knows the teams, they do their own thing. They wear their own gear, and they generally have the autonomy to do that. So anyways, This Afghan guy, they got his ass blown off with some sort of IED, and the team was doing life-saving work on him, and the medic is like, deep in this guy's guts, trying to keep him together from dying. The guy ended up dying, but he's doing all this stuff, and the CSM is out there with the chaplain. And I got this story from the chaplain's assistant, because the CSM, while he's in the middle of this, looks at the medic and goes, "Are those boots authorized?" What? we're trying to save this guy's life, and I have my hands in his guts, and you're asking me my boots are authorized? So right there, somebody has to do the job. Why not him?
Yeah, I think
that
honestly, it reminds me of something. Have you seen that Infantry Dort account on Twitter?
Yeah.
I think it was him who posted it, because I think I saw him post something last night about, I guess there was some CSM who was watching, like, in the talk, watching like video of his patrol or something from an overhead, and saw like one of his soldiers didn't have gloves on, and like radioed in to say, "Hey, you need to make sure your soldiers have gloves on."
It's a wild level. It reminds me of that Generation Kill Sergeant Major. He's like, "Yeah, please, that mustache. We're focused on some of the most ridiculous things sometimes, and you get these leaders in there that you see it, and you're like, there must be a rhyme or reason to why he's telling me this. I mean, he got here for a reason.
Yeah.
No. Sometimes people are just there because somebody has to be there.
Like, I wonder if it's like, is it a block of instruction at the Sergeant Major Academy? Like, find something that you can make no sense of and make that your entire personality. Like, right. I mean, I remember, like, this was the First Armored Division had just kind of came in and taken over control of Baghdad and the airport from Third ID in 2003. And we were out on D Main Guard, and D Main Guard had 8 positions. And one of them, my favorite was the Porta-John for General Dempsey, who was a 2-star at the time. Like, one of your positions for 45 minutes will be to guard and make sure no one uses General Dempsey's Porta-John outside behind the D Main headquarters. But another one was like on the ECP. And one of our guys, this dude Bishop, huge dude. He played football for like Auburn or some shit. This is a big fucking dude. And his chin strap throughout the course of the invasion and just being in country for 7-8 months at the time, his chin strap, it didn't fit and was kind of like dangling like the little buckle on the old ACH.
Yeah.
Couldn't really latch it all together. And so this new First Armored Division Sergeant Major came through and got out of his Humvee and decided to make an example of Bishop, Specialist Bishop, wondering in front of everyone at basically 2 a.m, why are your fucking why is your chin strap broken in theater stuff? Like, what like, he went on a display for minutes just dressing down Specialist Bishop because he had the audacity to have a broken chin strap on guard.
It's so embarrassing, and I can think of fringe moments when I was in E5 where I did a couple of things like that, and I quickly assessed within a very less than a year. I was like, I don't want to be that guy.
Yeah,
I do not want to be this type of NCO.
There's a difference between a standard and just common sense.
Right. And
like, you don't know who this dude is.
I learned as a junior NCO fairly quickly. When I see E9 doing stuff like that, I'm like, man.
They're so far detached. They're just so far detached from reality, right? Like, I used to say, the one thing I remember being in basic training, and I still remember his name, First Sergeant Santos, little tiny Filipino dude, angriest fucking dude I ever met in my life. But I was like, if I ever make First Sergeant, I want to be like that guy, because in the moments of his anger, he was very like compassionate, and like, he was just an angry guy in front of formation. When you got on one-on-one, then you saw the human element, right? Never saw that from any Command Sergeant Major in my life. Never. Sergeant Majors, yes. CSMs, no. Like, SPO Sergeant Major, cool dudes. Commandants of the Drill Sergeant Schoolhouse when I was there, really cool dude. But an actual Command Sergeant Major having some common fucking sense, I've never really seen it. Never saw it. And it's once you're first sergeant, that's it. It's all over from there. It's kind of like officers, once they make captain and they're no longer company commanders, they move on to major. It's over. Like you said, ILE, they get the new brain. They no longer care. It's just about, how do I keep advancing? What do I do next to get to the next rank or grade, right?
That's reality. Yeah. It's funny you say that, because I had a SPO Sergeant Major, literally the chillest dude, and he had turned down being looked at for CSM like 3 times. I didn't know why, and he was like, I don't want to be a citizen. He's like, I don't I don't get anything else out of life by doing that. Like I'm good
No,
where
there's
I'm
no
at.
more pay. Like that's the
Right.
biggest scam of the enlisted rank is period. Once you make
Right.
E9, that's it.
That's it.
Nope. Battalion,
You're getting
brigade,
like an extra
division,
$25 per star
cool,
or something
bro.
like that.
Thanks. But if I'm an O
Right.
one and I go, or if I'm an O7 and then I make O10, oh shit, I'm making 200,000 a year. No,
Right.
nah,
Right.
that future's not in it for you, man. Like, yeah, maybe you get some of that per diem money. Maybe that's how they make it up for you. But that's how it is.
Something.
Yeah. I don't want to keep you much longer, but I do want to kind of like, what are you doing now? Like in terms of, I know you're still kind of involved with a lot of the shit going on with the veterans and all, but are you still actively fighting that fight to get the unlawful said from the DoD? You think that's going to happen? Is it going to take a few more? I mean, because like I said,
I
we're
am.
not even at 100 days yet, right?
Yeah.
We're
I
close.
am. I am. I'm involved in several different areas. Um, I'm involved with an organization called Remnant Ministries, who I was actively working for and with. Now I'm on the sidelines doing some other stuff. So my full time day to day is I'm the chief operating officer for Our Country, Our Choice, and Republic. So Republic is something that I'm really excited about because it's going to be we call it a community engagement platform, but it's another form of social media. And I know saying that you're like, dude, we don't need more social
Yeah.
media. It is very different. It is very different. We are focused on the community. We are focused on the local level, reporting events and empowering people to get engaged in their communities. And that might sound boring now, but it's going to be a big deal. One of the biggest things I wanted to do with TerminalCWO was teach people how to do what I do, so that they can report on what they're seeing, where they're at, and shed light. Because the only way things are going to change is if we bring these things to light and just flood them with transparency.
Hmm.
So when I got offered to do this job and be a part of this organization, I initially declined it. And after a lot of talks with the owner, I agreed to it because if this thing is successful and if we make this happen, this has a chance to transform politics uh, and and local awareness in our communities where it needs to happen first.
Yep.
This constant need
Yep.
to talk about national events and national politics and everything else. What are you going to do? I'm not going to
Yeah.
change anything in Congress. I
Yeah. It
can
doesn't
write
matter.
all of the op-eds I want. I can type all the garbage I want. Nothing is changing in Congress. The amount of money going in to Congress is insane. But I can change something in my community. The idea is I drive out of my community every day and hit the same pothole. I drive out in
Yeah.
my apartment, hit the same pothole every day. Is that something I should be focused on, or should I be focused on Nancy Pelosi
Right.
and her stocks? Okay, so that's cool. We can talk about that, and that's neat and all. But I'm not going to change what Nancy Pelosi is doing with the stock market and what she's doing with her own bank account. But I can change engagement with that pothole outside my damn apartment, and what community leaders are doing, and what my local elected representatives and my local sheriff is doing. I want to change this nation from the ground up. So that's where I'm at. It was something I was passionate about before, where I was at, and I want to keep doing that because I want to give power back to the citizens so they can make change in their community. That's what I'm doing now.
No, that's cool. And you're right. Like, I mean, there's so many people on X that have, become friends with over the years. Like, Braxton McCoy talks about all the time. Like, your most important official is your local sheriff, and
Yeah,
people just take that for
100%.
granted, right? Like, you're right. And I think it's a distraction game because what's on TV, national level stuff, right? Like,
Right.
very rarely do you get a lot of attention on the local things that actually affect the daily individual every single day. So that's good. So what's the name of the organization again?
Republic and Our Country, Our Choice. It's actually under Veracity News, and
Okay.
I can't think of the other one on the top of my head, but basically,
You got X accounts?
republic.us. What's that?
You got
Yeah,
Twitter X accounts and all that stuff throwing them
Our
up?
Country, Our Choice is on social media. So is Republic. Technically, it's
Okay.
don't go to that one. That's we found that there's these big Indian accounts that have Republic as well, and they're like 3 million bot followers. They have like
Nice. We're
50
out there.
likes on each of their posts, but they have like 3 million followers. Who are like, can you just give me the name, please, and
Yeah. That's
delete your account? But anyways, um, But no, the launch for our platform, the relaunch is coming out in June. So you can go to republic.us now. It's not ready. We're doing a relaunch soon with a lot of new features, and an app is coming out. But we really believe it's going to be transformational. So it's going to take some time, but we'll
Yeah.
get there.
No, well, hey, anything I can do to help spread that once you do actually get it launched, I'm sure you'll probably throw it out there on X, but look forward to joining it. Look forward to being participating in it. And I wish you the best, man. And thank you for spending your time with me this afternoon. Good luck out there in the Florida sun.
Thanks, man.
All right,
Appreciate it.
brother. Appreciate it. Oh, hold on.